Today we're going to be taking a look at the Dexter Electric Brake Assembly for 4-bolt or 5-bolt flanges for the right-hand side and 6,000 pound axles. It is also available for the left-hand side as well as a set. So here's what our electric brake assembly is going to look like once we have it installed. Now obviously we have the wheel and the hub removed so you can see everything, but the entire assembly is going to be a lot easier to install rather than having to just replace the shoes. We're not going to have to worry about dealing with the springs and remembering exactly how everything goes together because it's going to go on as a whole assembly. Our brake assembly is going to be a 12 by 2 inch brake assembly, so it's going to fit wheels from 14.5 up to 16 inch. And it is designed to work with 6,000 pound axles. Now most hub and drum assemblies are going to be either using a 4 or a 5 bolt design. Now our brake assembly here can use either, so either way, if you have 6,000 pound axles with 12 inch brakes, these are going to be a perfect replacement. Now on the bottom of our assembly, if we come behind the magnet, we'll see that we're going to have this wheel. That's to adjust our brakes so we can make sure that the tension is proper on there. Now I went ahead and pulled these two plugs out, but on the backing plate, it's going to give us an access spot so we can take an adjuster and get it in through our assembly and either tighten or loosen the brakes as needed. So whether you're replacing the brakes in your trailer because they're worn down, or if you're upgrading to adding brakes to your trailer, these brakes are going to be a lot easier to install than hydraulic ones. With hydraulic brakes, we're going to have to worry about running lines, having an actuator, and a lot more. These, all we're going to have to do is mount them up. We'll have 2 wires that'll hook into our wiring on our trailer, and then we just need a brake controller in our towed vehicle. But now that we've seen what our brakes look like and gone over some of the features, let's show you how to get them installed. To begin our installation, you're going to want to lift your trailer up, use some jack stands to support it so we can remove the tire. Once we have the tire removed, we're going to need to remove the grease cap on the end of the hub here. Now typically, we'll take a hammer and we can just kind of tap it. We can take that cap off, but we don't want to damage it, so I'm going to take a flat blade screwdriver and try to get that edge to come up a little bit. We can just work our screwdriver, pop the cap off. Behind the cap we'll have our castle nut. We should have some kind of keeper, maybe a tab like this, or you may have a cotter pin. Either way, we're going to need to remove that keeper and move it out of the way of our castle nut so we can loosen it up. Now once that tab is out of the way of the castle nut and we can loosen it up, we're going to go ahead and remove the castle nut. We'll pull the nut off and we can start pulling either the ring or cotter pin or whatever is holding it in place. We'll pull that off. And if you want, you can actually grab the whole hub and drum assembly and very carefully slide it out, and that'll bring all the bearings and washers and everything else out, and we can grab them before they hit the ground. Now, the bearing may not come out that easily, and we can pull the entire hub assembly off. The hub removed, you'll notice that we're going to have a few nuts that are holding our brake assembly in place. We're going to want to remove these. I'm using a 9/16 socket to pull those nuts off. We'll break them loose. And chances are, most of them are not going to come off. Few of them might, but that's because these are going to have a head on the back of the bolt, so we may need to get a 9/16 wrench to hold the stud still. You want to remove the brake assembly, but keep in mind there are wires that are going to it. So we can cut the wires. I like to leave myself as much as possible, so I'm actually going to cut them up here. We'll swing our brake assembly out of the way. so we can get access to the wires on the back side. Now the reason why I like to leave myself as much as possible is because if our new brake assembly has shorter wires or anything that way, we know we have enough. We'll cut it and we can get rid of the old brake assembly. So we can grab our new brake assembly. Before I put it in place, I'm actually going to make my connections for my electrical. That way it's a little bit easier. I don't have to crawl on the ground to make these connections. So we'll carefully set our brake assembly down, and we're going to strip back the end of each one of our wires. You're going to grab some butt connectors. We'll slide it over our wire, and we can crimp it in place. We'll do that for each one of the wires coming out of the axle. And we can take the wires coming out of our brake assembly now, and it doesn't matter which one we use, we just want to hook one wire to each one of these. So make sure it goes all the way in our butt connector, and we'll crimp it down. I use a heat gun to shrink down my butt connectors, but if you're using an open flame like a torch or a lighter, you just want to be extra careful not to burn or char the wire or the connector. Now we'll take our brake assembly and we're going to line it up with the bolts in the back, making sure they all go through. You also want to be mindful of the wires. Since we do have a little bit of excess, you just want to make sure they don't get stuck on that mounting plate back there. Push all of our bolts through and put the ones back in if they fell out. Then we can loosely put all the hardware back in place. Just get it started by hand so we don't have to worry about the brake assembly falling down. We'll come back with a 9/16 wrench and socket and snug it all up. Now, whether we're replacing the hub or putting the same one back on, we want to make sure that we clean all this area really well, because that's where our hub is going to be riding on, and we don't want all this dirt, debris, and other stuff to be on there. So we'll clean it off really well. So we can grab our hub and drum assembly now, and then we can just reassemble everything the way we took it off. That'll finish up your look at the Dexter Electric Brake Assembly for 4-bolt or 5-bolt flanges for the right-hand side and 6,000-pound axles.